Greetings, folks. This is Scott, and you're tuning into A Woman's Place, the podcast where we break down all the policies and politics that affect the 51%. That's right, women are half the U.S. population, and Ashley and I are here to give you the facts about how today's events are affecting them. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hi, Ashley Brown.
Hi, Scott Osborne. How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I am good and excited to continue our conversation about why it's all women's fault.
It's all women's fault. All these recent changes. You would think that if you read some media, yes. For those of you who don't know, we are very much tongue-in-cheek on this one, but we are talking about all the changes that have occurred to women or that they have brought about, and the current feeling in some circles that this is a bad thing. So we are taking a deep dive at what has changed in women's and men's roles in the last 50 years, because we like our facts and some commentary on top of it.
I know I love fun facts and commentary. We're toward the end of June, which is shocking to me. Like half the year is gone.
Half the year, past the solstice, days are getting shorter.
Do you know what I think is interesting? Forever, time seemed to go slowly until, I don't know, it's probably in my 20s or something, before it really was just like that, the weeks are long, but the years are fast kind of thing. But I heard my grandson, who's now 14, is that right? 13. He was the first to say, the school year went so quickly, and I'm like, geez, I don't remember that. And then yesterday, from granddaughter who's 8, going to be 9, she made a comment to her mom that summer already seems to be going so fast.
Oh, funny.
Well, it's just kind of one of those things of everyone, it just feels like that it's getting deeper and deeper into our age groups that they're feeling the pace of life, which is a little sad for me, but
Yeah, but I think part of it is we are creating it and we can uncreate it. Obviously, the pace of life as we get older, you have that sense, but we have so little empty space now, so little boredom, including kids. We have packed lives and devices which fill all the empty space. And empty space is languorous space, is time, is a feeling of luxury of time. And we intentionally, or without realizing it now, fill it all. And that contributes to that sensation. So I do know what you mean with age, but we're accelerating that because of how we spend the time.
Yeah, I think maybe we should challenge ourselves and anyone listening to maybe think about that. And
when was the last time people had, or kids had a day or more where no structured activities, just hang out, read a book, wander around the house, but no devices, because that's just a little dopamine attack, But yeah, it's a thing.
And go play in the dirt. So anyway, that's my moment today. So
that's the time speeding up moment. But we are in the end of June, and we're in the end of Pride Month, and I thought a little bit about Pride Month, which is not our major topic today, but I thought we're also in an era when so many gay rights feel like they're perhaps being threatened. And it's so interesting. This is other shows about how gay people, lesbians, gays, people who are gender nonconforming, or people who prefer relationships that are not traditionally male-female for part of their life or all of their life, are so threatening to deep believers of the patriarchy. I've always found it very interesting because in a way, it's not a very harmful thing on the surface. If you say, well, what are these people doing with their lives? And of course, they're doing the same thing that anybody's doing with their life. They're going to school, they're working, they're being together, they might be raising a family, they're taking vacations, etc., etc. So the activities in and of themselves are in no way threatening, harmful. It's the idea that the traditional man-woman relationship can be changed, is malleable, isn't cast in stone, that many people find very threatening from religious roots and other places. This is a deep conversation, but never fails to amaze me.
And it's in a bit of alignment on what we're talking about of the discomfort of women and how women have expanded roles and broken out of gender norms from the traditional sense is
Yeah, if
all
you're just
seeing.
parachuting into today's talk, I mean, I think we're going to give you some great facts, but the underlying point is that we have had phenomenal changes in a little over 50 years. We're focusing mostly on the US, but many of those changes are global. But phenomenal changes, especially in the role of women and in the span of marriages and economic arrangements. It's a very short period of time. And what we're really seeing is the creakiness, some of the backlash, you could call it, the challenges people have in changing profound ways of thinking about each other and seeing who's an authority figure, who isn't, what are the roles among people. So our point is really just that those changes have been so fundamental, and we may applaud some of the changes, we may be dismayed by some of the changes, depending on your perspective or what they are. But social scientists would tell you, hey, people don't make changes that quickly. It takes a while. They really understand that. So should we talk about some of the specifics?
Yeah, I think we absolutely should. And can we start with comparing some of the stats just because
Sure. I love my stats.
with
So
right.
women, do you remember a percentage of women who were married by age 30 in 1970? 1970 is a little more than 50 years, but kind of our bellwether. Percentage of women in the US married by the age of 30 in 1970.
Are we
Well,
ready?
yeah, we're ready.
90%.
90%.
And what was the
Virtually
median
everyone.
age?
Yep. Median age was not even 21, 20.8. Half the women are married by the time they're 20. So again, talk to your mothers, grandmothers, whatever your age. This is why women would be 25 and have a couple of kids at home already. And today, the median age of marriage is over 20, and it's almost 29. So you're talking almost a decade in a very short period of time. Think about what happens in those years in their 20s. Women are going to school, they're beginning to have independent lives, they might be on their own, they're having a whole different perspective, not child rearing. And the percent married by age 30 is fewer than half. So that is absolutely plummeted.
And
fewer
when we say fewer than half, it's 32%.
Is that what the number is? Thank you.
So.
Yes. So not even a third. So that is a dramatic, which we know anecdotally. You see young people, they're not marrying. Now, I really, to be totally candid, have to say many other changes, not just in gender roles. Economic roles have changed, the affordability. We're going to talk about education. So these things have all come together. Birth control meant people could change their family life. You know, it used to be very common that women would get married earlier because, let's face it, they wanted to have sex. Sex and babies out of wedlock was socially stigmatized. So marriage is the route. You could not control that. So, you know, these things are very intertwined. I mean, not at all easy to pull apart. But 30, not even a third of women today are married by the age of 30. Many will later get married, but they're not marrying young the way they once might have.
Well, and I was looking at the single mother number too. So it was 11%, like in the 70s, compared to, are we
Single women raising children? Yeah.
Are we 25% now?
25%.
Doubled, more than doubled.
Doubled. Now that's an interesting figure because today they think that they don't think, we know that probably a good chunk of those are actually cohabiting, but without legal marriage. So that is not always a single parent household, but legally that's a mother who has complete custody of children, but maybe cohabiting. Might be with the father, they just haven't married, might be with another partner. So we do see a lot of that because cohabitation now is much, you've lost the social stigma. So also single parenting, single motherhood, motherhood by choice, not marrying, all of these things, cohabiting. I mean, just think about that. You wouldn't have cohabited really at a wide spread 50 years ago, but that being almost the norm in most circles now, or an expectation, or no social stigma, I should say.
Ooh, can
Those
I
are huge changes.
Funny story.
Yeah.
So we were looking for a church. We were shopping for a church. Full disclosure, I was not really going to church. My now husband, it was important for him to have some faith-based activities. So I'm like, okay, I was raised Episcopalian. Let's check out an Episcopal church. Da 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 da. I think he's Lutheran. He was Lutheran. So we were not married. We were living together. And so we joined this church, and I was told not to tell the priest that we were living together because that would be seen at, and I'm like, this is 2010, 2009. So this is not.
And here I just said the social stigma disappear, but you're right. Certainly you're talking about religious circles because most of it does come from religious stigma. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, obviously, right. I don't want to be too glib. There are certainly pockets, people for whom that is stigmatized, but the frequency and the commonality of it is a radical change. There's no question. Yeah.
And it was, at age 40 to be told, keep.
Yeah, I was gonna say you probably weren't kids.
I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. The expectations change completely.
Actually, I said no, thank you, Scott, and we go to the Lutheran church. So there you go.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, that is a thing too. Once people are church shopping, yeah.
All right. Anyway,
Very different expectation. But it's interesting, the women having fewer children altogether. Women used to have about 3.1 children statistically, US. Now it's 1.6 to 1.7. We've talked about the fertility concerns from an economic perspective. We really don't know if that's going to level out because a lot of that is because young women, teenagers and young women in their 20s are not having babies, but they seem to be having children later. So we might be sort of in this bubble. But women having children later and marrying later means not only do they have education, they've got a sense of independence, they have economic independence, they don't have the level of dependency that women were in marriages in 1970, for example. If you're 19, with fewer other choices about family formation, you couldn't get a bank account, you couldn't get a mortgage, you couldn't get birth control without your husband's signature. There's a huge level of dependency. And that has changed.
Did you just go, ugh?
It's a huge level of dependency. Wait a minute, let's talk about education. We talked about Title IX and other things. So today, in 1970, 11% of women had college degrees, 4-year college. Today, 40% of women. I mean, that's huge, and younger women especially. Almost half of all young women are taking 4-year bachelor's degrees. Many more than men. That's a whole separate conversation. Men are not making the same educational choices that women are for a lot of reasons. And women are also now attaining not just bachelor's, but professional and graduate degrees. 60% or close to 60%, MDs, doctors, lawyers, PhDs, pharmacy. I think it's 80% of veterinarians. It's become a very female field. So we're seeing women striving for these graduate programs. So the flip in education for women, once they had those opportunities, is phenomenal. It's just dramatic. And that's in a very short space of time.
Well, and that helps build economic independence.
Economic independence and psychological, social, intellectual independence.
Yes.
You've read books, you've talked to people, you've met other things, you've maybe gone away, you've lived on your own. It drives a whole different sense of expectation of having an independent life. There's no question. And that really can't be underestimated. And again, we've seen that around the world. Educational statistics are very close to parity or ahead of. In places where women achieve parity, then they frequently are advancing past in terms of degree entertainment, advancing past men. But here's an interesting one that I love also is single women are now 20% of home buyers in America. 20%. They don't need to get married. They're buying homes. I mean, this has market changes, if you will. Women are consumers very much in their own right, which is a big difference from women might have had, an allowance from their husbands or something. Men are not buying homes at the same rate. It's about half of that. Some of this is women living older. We know that women live later, but not so much. Mostly it's young women buying homes. And again, anecdotally, I know many women who want a place, have the income, and are willing to make that commitment. And Partner may or may not come, children may or may not come, but they don't want to spend rent. They want to make that decision to buy a home.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and I'm going to check this out. I'm going to check myself and we'll put a link in the show notes. But I think women in women-owned businesses are a third of the GDP in the US.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I'd have to look that up.
And
Yeah.
I need to verify. I just was at a conference and talking about why we need everybody in the economy, including immigrants, including women, including, so, I think we talk about all of these and like just amazing shifts. And as you say, in a short period of time, amazing shifts, but there's been some backlash because of, and the going back to the nuclear family and going back to um the anti-woke movement, etc., of if it's not the traditional norm, it's bad, right?
Yeah, I think there's a few sort of paradoxes and then different ways in which there's pushback. I mean, when I say there's some paradoxes, and even, for example, the women have all this educational attainment and higher and professional degrees, there's still a pay gap. There's still a huge pay gap. So even though women are half of doctors or lawyers or, whatever kind of thing, part of that is because STEM is highly rewarded. Fewer women go into STEM for a lot of reasons. A lot of it is because of care responsibilities, which we talk about a lot. Women still have the brunt of both home and especially childcare, even if they're later. Maybe they're 35 now, but then they've had a job, they've got to step out at some point. So we know that happens. So for a variety of reasons, you still see significant pay and then asset gaps, notwithstanding this education.
And the asset gap is, obviously it compounds over the years of your earning capacity, but it's 5 times less than a married couple and 3 times less than single male-headed households.
Right. And so by the time women are older is when they really, poverty in the elderly is so much of a female issue because they do have that big difference. I think also you see different, how do I want to put this? The educational attainment has not led to some of the wage gap. We also don't see the political changes. Women certainly have more leadership roles in politics, decision making, corporate hierarchies, C-suite, but it is nowhere near the accomplishments of women in education. Women are about parity, 50-50 in a lot of educational attainment, but politics, if you look at represented officials, we can't crack a third. I think a lot of places we're 28%. It's really never gone above 33%. It's very sticky there for a lot of reasons. Same thing with corporate decision making, Fortune 500s, etc. Serious leadership. There's some brief decline in that now in the past, I think 1 or 2 years. Are we seeing a little bit of a pushback? So whether that's going to sort itself out over time because you've got this educational attainment, whether it's not, we've had hundreds of years of men assuming they are the leaders and the decision makers. And we've had hundreds of years of women looking to men to be the leaders and the decision makers. So both parties have to change if we want to get the best out of everyone. I mean, our premise is that a man may be a great leader, a woman may be a great leader, but let's get the best out of everybody and not have those stereotypical boxes. But a couple of other interesting, I would say, unintended consequences is we've seen huge turnarounds in something like the teaching profession. And now I'm talking about pre-university, school, elementary and secondary schools, was overwhelmingly female prior to 1970, 1980. And you had really a population of women, sometimes quite well educated, who had few other choices. That was a very feminized profession. They had few other choices. And so you had this pool of teacher availability that you have lost today. Men have not gone deeply into the profession, and women have all these other choices. So we have teacher shortages, we have different populations going into teaching, and part of that is because you've had this massive shift. Women had other opportunities, and they went toward things that perhaps had been denied them, things that might have been more lucrative. So kind of an unintended consequence is our teacher pool changed dramatically. Women didn't have other choices. It worked with the school year. They could still take care of children. That changed. And men have not moved in to fill some of those gaps.
And one that I think is interesting, and it's a dual like negative at times, is nursing. So,
Yep.
traditionally seen as female. And I think that men get the short end of the stick of men who want to enter the nursing field have judgment. I'm hoping that's shifting at some, but and it all goes back to the gender boxes and social norms. And again, what should you be doing as a female versus what you should be doing as a male? So I think
Care work is feminized.
right.
Care work is feminized, and men are socialized to avoid feminine. So it's a huge hurdle for them. And these might be good professions, except for some of the more technical ones, or PAs. PAs are male. That's seen as like a doctor's assistant. But if it's called a nurse, it's very tough. That's seen as care. But I mean, we should mention that some other trends, the economy has shifted so much so that so many manufacturing jobs have dried up. We've shifted to a much more service economy. So women's role in our economy has changed. Dual incomes are now the norm. The price of living, the price of homes, etc., has changed such that very few couples can get by on just one income, certainly if they have children. So dual incomes have become the norm. I think it's also worth noting one thing that is a big, I guess I would say, implication, and this may lead to a little bit of the backlash question. For one of the first times of human history, but certainly in many, many, many years, men have no automatic control over whether they can have children or not, and being in a family with children. Because you do not have women automatically getting married because people wanted to have sex. It was socially mandated. It was religiously mandated. Women couldn't get educated. Bam, you were married by 2021. Families occurred. And so now for the first time, and this is something that is both fascinating and sort of poignant. I think if men want to have children, probably on average as much as women may want to have children. They may or may they not, but that's a perfectly human, legitimate desire. And now because marriage is not quote unquote automatic, it doesn't happen automatically. And part of what we're seeing now is men, especially young men, struggling to see, how do we make this happen? Recent polls have shown men very much want families in general, not all, but still want families, still want children. But marriage is not automatic because women are not dependent. Young women are in school. Again, they may marry later. Men are less likely to have some of the educational and income attainment that they might once have had. And so that whole package and that whole equation has shifted. And that is really profound, that men, for the first time, struggle to have control over something that's very important to them. And I do think in some circles, the talk about sort of, women's places back in the home is partly driven by that there's a role of the family. This is how men have families, which I don't like the control, but I see the human need.
No, you can understand, like intellectually, you understand what's
Yes,
happening,
I do.
but it's also,
How do we achieve that?
yeah, it's, I don't understand why women winning, and I have quotation marks on that, means that men lose. Like it doesn't, like there needs to be a protagonist and an antagonist, and it's like, why? Like it's again, just pitting people against each other seems to be the easiest way to get out of any of these conversations, when it is a huge shift in how we view things, and it just takes a while to move through it. But it's, why demonize women making choices about what their path is?
Well, and I mean, I think as a gender equality advocate, I think we all do better. These families, these communities, these societies, if we're getting the best out of everybody. If we have an educated woman who's in her job and an educated man and they're doing things that they find fulfilling and they're sharing these things, in my world, that's all better.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, but now you're raising a point which is a little bit about the desire to stoke differences. And I think that has to do with communications and media and people and organizations and political structures that profit from conflict. I think there's much more conflict kind of in our media sphere and our social media and our political sphere that benefits from that. And people really are trying to work it out in a human sense. You talk to people in their 30s. I know many couples, it's like, yeah, they're trying to figure out who does raise the kids. Do we get married or not? I mean, in a very human way, they want to be together. I don't think we have a decline yet in people who want human intimacy, though we'll talk about digital devices replacing that separately. But for those who still
Different
do
topic.
value children and human intimacy and the relationships, then they're trying to figure out how to work it out. And I think the divisiveness of our kind of meta communications is extremely harmful, extremely harmful. And men lose only if their only view of success is what it used to be.
Right.
If they are, then I would have to say, yeah, if the only way you want it to be is you're automatically, without anything other than birthright, head of the household, authority figure, decision maker, breadwinner, have a dependent spouse at your beck and call. If that's your vision of winning, then that is not working anymore, and you might feel that you have lost. If you are, as I like to say, in the 21st century and open to other ways of relating, then you haven't necessarily lost. You may, in fact, have gained. Many men will tell you who have spouses or female partners who make an income. Of course, they need that income. They all benefit from that. That's not a, they're not foolish. They realize the reality.
Well, and again, if the male in a household finds joy in staying home and raising kids, and that what works for the family, celebrate that as well. So, okay, our time,
We are running out of time.
we're
We could
running
go
out
on
of
for a whole
time.
other show, but we are running out of time. Many things we didn't talk about. We are seeing pushback. I think it's very, very challenging. We haven't even talked about, of course, the most dramatic for many people was the absence of federal protections for abortion with the Dobbs decision in the fall of Roe v. Wade. Many people felt that that was a very much of a kind of bellwether of change. And now we're definitely in a moment where kind of masculinity is being celebrated and things feminine are seen as negatives. I suspect that will turn around. I think there's both many women and many men who do not see all things feminine as negatives, but
Agreed.
it definitely is working to pump up division in our society today.
Well, and maybe that's what we do and encourage people that anytime that narrative is being pushed, like, to what end and why? Like,
Yeah.
going to the motivation. I feel like we could have another show on this. We
I
thought
bet we'll pick it up in
enough.
other shows. We'll pick up many of these themes again.
No.
And we didn't mention, stay tuned. Stephanie Kuntz is going to be speaking with us. She is one of the foremost marriage experts. She's got a new book out, so we're going to have a show in the future on her.
Awesome. Scott, as always, thank you for a great
Thank you,
conversation.
Always a pleasure.
I know. Until next time.
Until next time.